Yeah, the first question is, we did hear about some that approach this work with unaccompanied minors from a foster parent perspective. What are some other ways that people could help unaccompanied minor children if they're not able to foster at this time?
Great. Well, I can share, and then Benny, I could have you share too. A question about how people can help with unaccompanied minors that aren't available to foster currently. I think I'll speak as a former foster parent for a few unaccompanied minors myself. I think just being aware of people in your church that might be serving in this way or in your community and rallying around them to support them. It can be a lonely endeavor. I remember when we had a young guy that lived with us for a year and a half, bringing him to our church that was generally supportive, but I just never really knew what people were thinking about us having this little Honduran with us. But the people who approached me with words of affirmation and encouragement and tangible, offers to make meals and those sorts of things really went a long way in helping us be able to continue to serve. So Benny, I don't know if you have any other ideas on how people can be supportive of the work of unaccompanied minors.
I earnestly support whatever you said, because it is I wouldn't say lonely to the greatest extent, more so than you are constantly going. You don't know when to rest. So having even sometimes just a friendly ear to vent, a friendly face to come into the house and watch the kids a little bit, if you are building a network of support, would be great, because it really affirms not only the work that we are doing, but really transforms your life of loving your neighbor.
Absolutely. So, are there, I know this can be a bit complicated, but are there opportunities for people to volunteer in a program like Nueva Esperanza?
Very limited.
Very limited.
Very limited.
Yeah. Okay.
Unfortunately, limited as it might seem, there are many other ways you can communicate with neighborhood ministries to not only have your gift of labor, but also coming in as mentors, as there's a lot of goodwill that we need. Yeah. And I think that's where we can be meaningful in our service.
Great. Thanks, Benny. We have another question, Josh?
Yeah, the last question is actually a question that was asked yesterday during our social justice session, but we weren't able to really get to it. So I'm wondering if we could maybe apply it here in terms of immigration, and that is, what does it look like for the church to engage in this work, particularly in rural areas in Arizona? So I know you do field work across Arizona and beyond. So what does that look like in Arizona, particularly along the border and in small town Arizona?
Great question. So I would say, and this, not just for Arizona, but anybody who might be watching this who lives outside of a metro area. I mean, there are certainly different experiences that are available in a metro area. I don't know that there are many transitional foster care opportunities in rural communities, for example. But what I would say is, wherever you are, there are immigrants. I'm very confident in saying that. Whatever part of the country you live in, however rural you think your community is, be on the lookout for the migrant in your community. They're probably doing a lot of the hard work. They are maybe doing a lot of the backbreaking labor in farms, especially here in Arizona, in southwestern Arizona. In the Yuma area, we do a majority of the lettuce farming for the country, and a lot of those workers are immigrants. Actually, there's there are a lot of simple things you can do if you seek out people who are different than you, even to just smile at the grocery store. Figure out where the soccer league, the adult and kids soccer leagues are happening in your community. There's a good chance that there are immigrants involved in that. Probably there are church services happening in other languages. There's a good chance that there are immigrants there too. So this is it's an opportunity for ministry, even ministering through the love of being a good neighbor. That is a tremendous ministry that all of us can be doing with our neighbors, regardless of their immigration status.
Great. And then a final question is, this work is often very political as people are trying to advocate for one policy or another. And for those who are standing up and reaching out to our representatives and senators, frequently the responses that we get back can email responses or there is no response. So we feel like it's not really making any movement. So from your perspective, what can we do? What is most effective to best advocate for children and for immigrants across the board?
Yeah, great question. Well, I think it's important that I try to say this in as many venues as I can. As followers of Jesus, we need to understand the difference between being political and being partisan. So I think as members of a democracy, we are all called to be involved in the political process in some way, shape, or form. And we can actually do that. Even in 2021, we can do that without being partisan. I'm a firm believer in that. And what does that mean? I mean, we criticize when decisions are made that are not made out of compassion and love, and we support when there are decisions that are made out of compassion and love. And I think one thing that is missing in this conversation a lot is thanking members of Congress, thanking administrations when they do the right thing. If you really want to get the attention of a congressional office and they, legitimately do something that you appreciate, a note of thanks is probably a way to get a response from a staffer, because that's very rare. But also I would say, there is a certain impact of faithfulness to doing the right thing, to advocating for the vulnerable, whether or not that message is heard by the person you're trying to convince. It's a faithful act for the person taking the action. So I would just encourage people, even if you don't think your advocacy is making a difference, it's making a difference in you. It's making a difference in the way that you're showing and demonstrating your love of neighbor. And I think we have Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to jump in because this is kind of in my job description here at Kino. One really practical thing that we tell groups, when we have groups that come here for immersions, part of the agreement when they come is that they take this and apply what they learned in their communities. In terms of advocacy, especially in terms of advocacy to Congress, we talk about with more effort, it gets, there's like a sliding scale of effort, and then so a sliding scale of efficacy. Like a handwritten or a meeting with a congressperson or a staffer in person or on Zoom with these town halls, that counts way more than 100 emails from like change.org or one of those like candy emails that you send. After that, telephone calls are where you can actually leave a message, talk to a person, are really important. One time when I was lobbying for immigration reform in the Capitol, in one of the congressman's office, there was a whiteboard, and he had like little tallies of calls for a measure and then calls against a measure. And he said, well, there's a lot more calls for the measure, so I'm going to vote for it. So they really do take that into account. Handwritten letters are really important. Last step would be emails. And if you write an email, a personalized email is going to be more effective than an email where you're just copying and pasting and sending. But aside from those like very like technical, particular kind of practical things, I would also say that keep in mind in these discussions, in these debates, keep in mind particular people and particular people's stories, and then your relationship with particular people affected by these issues. It's one thing to like talk about policy as this thing in the clouds and this abstract. But it's always great to bring it back down to earth and say, well, if you're talking about it with someone, and you can say that's all well and good, but how does it affect Naomi? How would this policy, this general rule that you want to implement, affect a particular person with a particular story? And always returning to the particular and always grounding it in relationships and people we know. Because when we talk about massive numbers, when we talk about surges, when we talk about these things, it's very easy to dehumanize and to lose sight of the human person. So just want to leave you all with that.
Thank you so much. Couldn't agree more. Thank you. Okay, well, I think we are at time. So thanks everybody for your attention, and hopefully you were impacted by this time. I know I was, so I'm grateful for that, for the opportunity to do this. I'm grateful to Kit and the team for this opportunity. So thank you so much.